Well, hello there. Welcome to another episode of Film Seizure. I'm Jason Oliver, and I've got with me two of those other guys that I talk to every week about movies. Who are they? Speak up, Chuck. Who are you?
I'm Chuck. That's a mighty fine introduction you got there.
Who's the other guy?
The other guy, this guy right here, is Jeff Arbuckle, and it's the same old song every week.
Same old. It's
Yep.
the three same douchebags.
Just a different movie.
Different movie, three same spags.
Yep.
Well, this is
I
a
did a
kickoff
thing. If anybody knows what we're talking about, I just did a thing there.
So we're kicking off a new month, a themed month, if you will. From time to time, we like to do those, and this is one that Chuck and I were particularly fond of doing. We wanted to do kind of a director deep dive, and we decided to do the first four films by the Coen Brothers for the month of May. And what we're looking at is Blood Simple to kick us off. That's this week's episode. And then next week will be Raising Arizona. The week after that, Miller's Crossing. And the last week of the month will be Barton Fink.
Barton
Fink. Everybody's chanting for that. Heck yeah.
Well, I mean, at least Millhouse and all those guys.
So we're going to kick it off with the debut feature by Joel and Ethan Coen, Blood Simple, 1987. Is that right?
84.
84. Geez. Alexa's talking to me for some reason. 1984, Blood Simple. What is Blood Simple? It is kind of a modern film noir, Southern Gothic, Texas story. And it's very much in a lot of ways, until I think No Country for Old Men, this was sort of their most conventional drama, right? It has some early stylistic highlights that they would come back to over the years in many of their movies, but it's a pretty straightforward story. You wouldn't even necessarily, I don't think, if you showed this to someone who didn't know what Blood Simple was, I don't even know that they would necessarily say, oh, that's a Coen Brothers movie. Later on when you get into stuff like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, Big Lebowski, it's pretty apparent that it's a Coen Brothers movie, right?
Right.
But this one's kind of like they're trying to figure some stuff out. They're learning to be filmmakers in this movie, and in some ways it shows, and in some ways it's like they're way ahead of most debut filmmakers. So it's a fascinating movie. It's not a perfect movie. It definitely has its flaws, but for me it's one that I like to go back to for the simple reason of it really is kind of like the genesis of so much of their style. It's the early seeds that were planted that kind of bloom in later films. So there's your introduction to Blood Simple. What do you think about that, Chuck?
I love it. I'm excited to do this month for First Things First, because the Coen Brothers, aside from falling in love with Peter Jackson when I was very young, the Coen Brothers were like my becoming an adult directors, if that makes sense. Like my late teens, early 20s. I'd already seen Raising Arizona. Blood Simple I came back to years later because I wasn't even aware of it. That was in a time in the late 80s, early 90s. You didn't always know what directors even did unless you went and researched it on your own. So I missed that early work of theirs until much later, I think. Probably sometime in the 2000s. So seeing it all those years later was actually really cool, as we'll probably discover going through the Coen Brothers in this segment, and then I think hopefully later another 4 or 5 movie run of Coen Brothers if we can. We'll see that growth, and I saw it like firsthand, having seen this movie so many years later, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
pretty
interesting.
awesome.
This was not the first Coen Brother movie I saw, for sure. I think the first one I saw was Fargo. No, I take that back. The first one I saw was Miller's Crossing, and I didn't know it was a Coen Brothers film. I didn't know anything about Coen Brothers. Miller's
That was
Crossing.
raising her.
We'll talk
Sorry.
about this in a couple weeks, but Miller's Crossing was one that was on cable TV all the fucking time. And I would always catch it in the afternoon on a Saturday and watch the whole thing. I had no idea who it was. But it was one of those things where after I saw Fargo and Big Lebowski, I connected the dots on Miller's Crossing. And I was like, oh, shit. And then I started going back. Funny enough, I think the first time I saw Blood Simple was in the theater, though, because they re-released the director's cut, which is funny because it was really the original release, pretty much. But when it was put out on VHS, they had some rights issues on some of the music. And the Four Top song that's played throughout the movie, they didn't have the rights to it, so they replaced it with something else on VHS. So then years later, they decided to do a director's cut where they could reinstate that song. And they also cut a little bit out of the movie because they didn't feel like the edit was tight enough. They cut about 2 minutes out of the movie and re-released it in theaters as the director's cut. And that's what I saw. I saw it in La Jolla at a little arts theater in California when I lived there. And I'd never seen the movie. It's a pretty cool experience. And then again, by then I'd seen everything, right? Everything that the Coens had made through 2000 or whatever I had seen. And it was a fascinating experience to go and watch that movie in the theater, having never seen it before, in a movie that came out in 1984.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, I interrupted you a little early on there. Raising Arizona was that movie for me. The first film, and we could talk about this more in depth later, but I happened to catch that like in the late 80s on HBO or something and didn't realize it was them until years later after I'd fallen in love with them during the Fargo, Big Lebowski, whatever. I can't remember the particular order of those films, that run of films where I was like, oh my God, these are the best people ever. I mean, there's something about that run, which we'll talk about later, that's just amazing to me.
For sure. For sure.
But yeah, back to Blood Simple. We haven't really checked in with Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Is this your first? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Coen Brothers, they are people I'm aware of. Now, I'm going to say something that I don't want to be taken incorrectly, and that is that I'm not a big fan of theirs. That doesn't mean I don't like their movies, but I don't gravitate towards them, if that makes sense. I had seen Raising Arizona probably 30 years ago. I certainly remember the commercials when that came out. I definitely saw Fargo. I saw The Big Lebowski. And outside of those three, I just watched Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? 6 months ago or whatever when we did that. I did see No Country for Old Men too. So those are the only movies of theirs.
That wasn't the first time that you saw Oh Brother, though, was it?
Well, it was the first time in 20 years.
Okay.
Take that back. I saw it because I worked at the movie theater at the time. I watched it, I think, there. But I didn't see it again until we watched it for the show. Not that
you
I
liked
didn't
it, right?
like it. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you
absolutely.
liked it this last time.
Oh, yeah. And I probably, I liked it back then. I think I liked it more the second time, if that makes sense.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, So, Blood Simple, I knew of, and it was certainly a, like a poster or a box art that it's very striking. And it's, so it's one of those things where, it's very striking 100% not because of the pink neon around it. It's because of the red high heels. It's settling that idea of this kind of sexual relationship. But
and a femme fatale in a way. Right?
In a way, yeah. There's a lot that can be said about that. And I'll reserve that until we get to it. But no, I had never been compelled to watch this movie, and I remembered when Miller's Crossing came out because it got a lot of really good buzz. Barton Fink, there was something about Barton Fink that was particularly significant at Cannes. It was something like it was the first movie to win like the jury prize and the actual like the crowd prize, I think.
Could be something like that. Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure in a few weeks.
I remember hearing that actually relatively recently. Again, it was one of those old Siskel and Ebert episodes I was watching. They were reporting about Cannes, and Barton Fink was the big winner. No, I remember those movies coming out. I referenced already the Simpsons episode where they were going to sneak into the R-rated movie called Barton Fink, and they were all excited. And even not seeing it, I knew that they weren't getting what they thought they were getting. So there's stuff like that. But no, I mean, really, in between Raising Arizona and Fargo, I mean, that's like 9-10 years in between movies that I had seen of theirs. And then, like Big Lebowski, but I never really kind of connected the dots other than Fargo was a little off center. Raising Arizona is a very different type of comedy. And Big Lebowski it is what it is, it's this kind of grandiose comedy. I mean, like I could connect those dots, but I didn't really connect the dots of any of their tropes or anything like that.
It's interesting because, sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
All I was going to say, and if you have something before we talk about the movie, I was just going to talk about the script and some Coen things, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that Barton Fink, Blood Simple is kind of the movie that they made to show that they could make movies. If
Proof
that
of
makes
concept.
Any sense. Yeah, it was. They intentionally chose the film noir subject matter because they knew that they could make it on a budget. They knew the look. They knew, they were already big fans of like Raymond Chandler and all of, the A Double Indemnity and those types of movies. It was an easy lift for them to write and direct this type of story on a really, really cheap budget. I think, Wikipedia says 1.5 million, but I think it was really half of that. That might have been some publicity budget that was lumped into that, but
right.
They did not make this movie for very much money, and it doesn't really show, other than the fact that the production design is scaled back, right? But what they do, they really put it on the screen. And it definitely feels like that. Okay, we're going to make this movie and we're going to use it to sell the next one, right?
How much do you think that's Barry Sonnenfeld, though? Because there are some really striking shots in this movie.
Yeah.
And
a
the
lot
use
of
shadows and, and all of that.
Oh, well, a lot of it is. I don't know the relationship with Barry I don't know where they met. It's funny, though, because if you talk to, or if you read anything about them talking about Blood Simple, they really have nothing but criticism for it. Both the Coens and Barry Sonnenfeld. There's a really fun feature on the Criterion Blu-ray where they're set up in a studio with telestrators. It's Barry Sonnenfeld and both Coens, and they're just picking the movie apart. It's hilarious. And Barry Sonnenfeld is so hard on himself. He makes fun of the fact that he uses coral blue way too much. He'll get the telestrator out and he'll circle the trees. It's like, what do you think, boys? A little too much blue there? There's a lot of talk about how the lighting isn't consistent, and him's like, well, you light for beauty, you don't light for accuracy.
Well, that brings up a good question because there was such kind of a gap that you don't see later in their career really until the later 2000s between Blood Simple and Miller's Crossing. And I know Raising Arizona was in there, but did Blood Simple really do anything for them career-wise, or was it Raising Arizona that kind of kicked off the Coens as we know them? Because I know they're known for their tight writing, which this film has. It's a small story, but it's got tight writing. It's got interesting characters. It's got those shots that, like Jeff said, maybe that's related more to Sonnenfeld, but it kind of reminds me of all of their other work. And then again, in like Breaking Bad in the 2000s, like it's almost like a straight lift of Coen's stuff. Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't think they make Raising Arizona without this movie.
Yeah,
This was a very critically well-received movie. It won a grand jury at Sundance.
Yeah, I've got the...
it launched them, absolutely.
I've got the theatrical poster on screen here as I was just kind of flipping through some of the pictures from IMDb. And right there on the poster is David Ansen from Newsweek. That's a pretty good blurb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for it to be inventive, original, it's maliciously entertaining murder story. That's that's David Ansen was not something to sneeze at.
Right.
And I mean, for all of the criticism that they themselves levy upon it, I think they're too hard on it, to be honest. I mean, you're going to do that. All three of them have become so accomplished in what they do, masters of their craft. They're going to go back and they're going to look at every little mistake they made, and they're going to highlight those things, not what they're proud of. It's just the way most meticulous artists are. Yeah. As a debut feature, as the first time anyone ever shot, or lit, I should say, and shot on 35 millimeter, Barry Sonnenfeld shoots the fucking shit out of this thing. I mean, it's gorgeous at times, and I don't even, he starts to point out the gels and things and the decisions that he made. But honestly, like, I love the look of it. I love the neon look of it. Yeah, I love that everything that glows is kind of an extension of the bar where the bad shit went down.
Yep, and the final act is just, I mean, it's almost perfectly shot. And I'll tell you, I saw a lot of Bound in those final scenes.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. I had that thought too. I was like, this is very Bound-esque. That's interesting that you caught that as well.
Well, and there is something else about this movie that I also can kind of tie to Bound, and I've kind of hinted at this. I thought this movie was, in a very, very different way than a lot of the other movies that we've talked about in the past, and a lot of movies coming out at this time in the 80s. I thought this movie was infinitely sexier than most of those others, erotic thriller type of movies that were coming out. And a lot of it is because these people are not your Kathleen Turners, your Sharon Stones, these are real looking people.
Yeah.
Which I think you just immediately get invested in Frances McDormand because you just are.
Yeah. We have a young Frances McDormand and John Ritter. It's not John Ritter, but
it looks a lot like John Ritter. Yeah, but that guy, there's a guy there who is not traditionally movie lead attractive, but you can kind of understand why you think he can pick up the boss's wife at the bar.
He's kind of a man's man, a quiet, understated man's man.
He's
no better way to say it.
Right. He's quiet. He's kind of understated. He's realistically hunky, if that makes sense.
Just say it, Jeff. You're in love.
Well, it's just like but he matches perfectly with Frances McDormand, who is also very real life sexy in this movie. You kind of feel like she is attainable in a kind of, hey, I'm going to be the cock of the walk in this little Texas town if I score this chick, I don't know.
Well, I was this many years old when I realized that guy, what's his name? John Getz. That's Stathis Borans from The Fly. He's the magazine editor, Beardo, like Gina Davis ex-boyfriend.
Oh,
I had John Getz is getting all the ladies.
I had no fucking clue. Like, he doesn't look anything like him. It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frances McDormand, first picture. I forget which Coen she married. Was it
It's
Ethan
Ethan,
or
isn't
Joel?
it?
I think it's Ethan.
Um, they fell in love on this set and are still together to this day.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry, Joel.
that's
She's
It's Joel.
Ethan's
Joel.
brother-in-law. God, I hope she's just his brother-in-law.
they were
Or
there was a small group of filmmaking friends. For those who don't know, the Ted and Sam Raimi, the two Coen brothers, Holly Hunter, Frances McDormand, Kathy Bates, and a few others. I can't quite remember who else that all kind of lived together at one point in time. They were all roommates.
like a commune or something.
Kind of, yeah. Like they sort of like swapped, living. I don't arrangements. I don't know. A bunch of them all lived together at some point.
Did they all live together in Frances McDormand's gigantic apartment?
I like to think so. Yeah, in that loft.
I want that loft.
It is awesome. But yeah, it's her first picture, and man, she's striking in this. Very beautiful, and very very good. Like her. I don't know. There's just something
she's playing young very well.
Yeah.
By young, I mean she was like in her mid-20s or something when this was made, but she feels like she is married the first guy that proposed to her, and the first guy happened to be Nick Tortelli from Cheers.
But she feels like a very, very accomplished, very mature actor in this. It doesn't feel like a debut. It's pretty. She's pretty amazing. And then of course she's acting. Does she ever actually share a scene with Dan Hedaya in this? Oh yeah, she does. The one scene where he comes to the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Where she shows off that she could be every bit the barefoot kicker that Rich Carlos was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just pulled a name out from the past, didn't I? Actually, that was one of my notes.
But I guess we should tell the tale, right? Should we start at the beginning?
Yeah, let's tell the yarn.
All right. So the movie begins with a car ride. Well, it begins with a narration, actually, about Texas, and I love it. It's M. Emmett Walsh, and you hear him before you see him, and he's telling a little soliloquy about how things are in Texas, and I forget exactly how he says it, but he says something about how in Russia they're all in it together or something like that, but in Texas you're on your own, right? It kind of sets the tone of the movie, and it sets the tone, sets the setting. You know where you are, and then you're in a back seat of a car, man and a woman in the driver's seat and passenger seat. It's raining. Windshield wipers are
worst windshield wipers, but they have perfect rhythm though to the
yeah. Well, they need to, because they also are wiping the credits for us.
Yeah.
Because you have this the oncoming headlights which flash in and bring in the next set of names, and then the wipers wipe them out, which is kind of clever.
Cool. Yeah, pretty cool.
I like it.
You also have the oh no, I'm sorry. I think it's actually Raising Arizona. The cutout titles. I think that's our next movie.
That's Raising Arizona. Yeah, that's beautiful. But anyway, what we have is they're talking, and you're not quite sure what happened. If you get a sense that this woman, she's running away from her husband. The person who is driving her,
considering it.
Or she's right,
because she's they've had a fight. Wishy-washy.
No, I think she's leaving. He's driving her somewhere, but she changes her mind on the road.
Yeah, because he says twice, "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing."
Right, and he keeps saying, "I'm not a marriage counselor," and then eventually Ray. Yeah, Ray says, "I like you."
Yeah.
Which is really kind of innocent, honestly. It's I like you. Well, that we don't know at that point if he's coming on to her or if he's being sincere. I just like you.
About
I wanna
helping
help
her.
you.
About helping
Yeah.
her. I like you. Yeah.
I like you. Yeah.
To me, it comes off genuine, but also a little bit searching. The way he says it is like, I'm trying to.
Let's put out some feelers and see if Yeah.
But you get the impression from Ray early on that he is not a bad guy. He's not trying to steal anyone's wife. He's trying to help a woman who's in some kind of distress, maybe. And I think the movie kind of leaves you in that stasis of unknowing because of her situation and because of the way the rest of the movie goes. You don't know who the bad guy is nearly ever.
You don't even get,
or if there is a bad guy, but you know what I'm saying?
Right. Like you like I didn't think like she's leaving after an argument, and of course her husband's Dan Hedaya, so you know how this, you know he's going to be an asshole, but but you don't get the impression that he hits her or anything. He just is a dick.
Yeah. He's an asshole
or
because
maybe
in his mind,
maybe he does hit her. We don't know, and we don't really care, to be honest.
Right.
He's
right.
Just, he just wants to leave.
The most we really get out of him later is that he believes she's cheating. He believes she's insincere. And that's why he's acting the way he does. Even in the scenarios where you perceive him to have the upper hand, he never does. Ever.
No,
so I don't know if he's like
awesome
a vindictive
recurring joke that happens that starts with him thinking he's making kind of like a statement. Only
he's just kind of a pitiful kind of aggressor. But we will get there.
He's kind of a big fish in a small pond, because this is a pretty small town in Texas.
But he's too big to move around.
He's too big to move around. But at the same time, though, he's really nobody. Nobody's scared of him, really. I mean, he's smaller than most people. He's older.
He's swarmy.
Than other
he's
guys.
Just swarmy. He's a swarmy dude.
He is, and he's just. Well, you run the bar that people pack in every night. And in Texas, that's enough to give you a little bit of standing, but nobody's really honestly scared. Nobody thinks you are actually dangerous.
This ain't a Roadhouse bar. Let's just say that.
No, they're not stealing eyeballs at the end of the shift.
But yeah, he's the reason potentially that Abby is running away. And Jason, I don't know if you want to continue with their conversation or what happens next with them, or I'll just say Abby has somewhat of a change of heart and they end up going to a hotel. But before that, she notices someone following them on the road. At least that's what I perceive as she notices, because she tells him to stop.
Well, we do see a VW bug drive by.
It stops behind him. It stops behind him. It sits there.
Right.
But it's weird. The way this scene goes, it's weird because after she tells him to stop and the car goes by, she says, what did that sign say back there? So it's unclear if she told him to stop because she thought someone was following him, or she told him to stop because she saw a hotel and now she wants to go there with Ray. It's kind of an interesting
because he's the
there.
one who they look behind. I'm assuming probably at the sign, and that they see a car has stopped behind them. And I think Ray's the one who says, do you know what that car is? Or do you know who that is? And she's like, no. Nope. And then it putters by them in that sound that only VW bugs make.
Right.
Well, it's almost the exact same device, trope, technique, whatever you want to call it, is used again in Big Lebowski, because it's Joe Polito, the PI in Big Lebowski, does the same thing. Follows the dude around in a VW bug.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Good catch.
Yep.
I expect I'll catch some of those things as we progress through these movies, maybe. But yeah, so they go to a hotel, right? And I think the next thing we see is they have a night of passion, quickly goes by, and then the phone rings. And I believe it's Julian Marty, who there's some confusion. One of the things they did poorly here in the beginning of this movie is that Dan Hedaya's name is Julian Marty, but he's referred to as Julian and Marty by different people.
Yeah, he is.
So
Yeah.
it's a little bit confusing in the beginning, but I believe it's him that calls and asks Ray if he's having fun, right? I think that's his exact words. Are you having fun? Basically letting Ray know, like, hey, I know where you're at. I know who you're with.
And
Blah,
also,
blah,
we
blah.
find out soon that Ray didn't show up for work either. So
No, he didn't.
that also leads to the potential question of, has Ray and Abby screwed around before? Or at least maybe not to this level where, as M. Emmett Walsh says, they go at it, they rest for a little bit, and then they go at it again. Over and over all night.
Yeah.
And that could have just been M. Emmett Walsh twisting a dagger a little bit just on this guy that hired him.
He twists a lot of daggers, M. Emmett Walsh, in this movie.
Lauren
Visser.
Dude, Lauren Visser,
Yeah.
he is a scary dude.
Yeah.
Because he is certifiably insane immediately. Because he takes pictures of Abby and Ray together and delivers the pictures to Marty, Julie, and Marty. And and Marty is like, hey, you didn't have to take the pictures. And he's like, oh, I'll call an added
benefit
or whatever. So in a way, he's sadistic.
In a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, but immediately we see him step outside of a boundary that he wasn't there to. He was there to follow them, not take pictures. And he brings back pictures of this guy's wife sleeping with another guy, and then laughs it off as if it's shouldn't have hired me then. Almost as if it's like, well, you get a dirtbag to do a dirtbag thing. Guess what the dirtbag does? Dirtbag things. So it's and that's your first kind of feeling that this guy is he's a little extra.
Yeah, he enjoys the pain of others a little too much.
Yeah.
He's a character that you see countless times in Coen Brothers films. He's like the entropy that enters the story that just fucking unravels everything, right? And he's showing that right here in the beginning, his evil little laugh when he laughs at because Ray is kind of taken aback, or Julian, is taken aback by the fact that he's showing him the pictures when he didn't have to, his enjoyment of it. He's like, well, if I need you again, I know which rock to turn over.
Right.
Indicating he's a snake, right?
Right. And also he's, in a way, I mean, Marty could probably look at I'm just going to keep referring to him as Marty. You keep calling him Julian.
Okay.
Marty maybe gets the impression it's like, hey, man, I have to already deal with one guy sleeping with my wife. Now I got to deal with another guy who's voyeuristically watching my wife and doing a little bit more than he needs to.
Right.
So yeah, it's like everybody in this movie has got at least one layer of scuzz to them.
Yeah, well, that's a great point, Jeff, because everybody in this movie does something immoral, right? And it all kind of comes back and bites them in their ass at some point in the movie. There's this fatalism in this movie, and it's honestly a theme in a lot of Coen Brothers movies, is that you get what's coming to you, right? And I kind of see in Visser a little bit of William H. Macy in Fargo. That character, obviously William H. Macy is not intimidating. He's not imposing. He's not scary, but he's trying to craft this perfect crime, and it all goes to hell, right? And it draws other people into it, and they don't even know what part they're playing in it until that part plays out, and it all goes to hell, right?
Right.
So it's this fascinating study of bad behavior, but also of like bad things happening to good people, right?
Right. It's like you opened up a bag of venomous snakes with the intention of killing or scaring somebody. You don't always have the worst intentions in Coen Brothers films, but you never know what that bag of snakes is going to do once you let it out. Right.
Yeah.
And that a lot of Coen Brothers movies are affected by that uncertainty of whatever. In this case, it's
A lot of
Warren
people end
Visser.
up getting bit by the snakes, right?
Yes, when your intention was
and it feels indiscriminate. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Which is great. Which is why I love Coen Brothers, films so much, because not only do they bring people like John Gates or Frances McDormand who look like people, who act like people, who are not gorgeous. Right, I say that with no malice whatsoever.
Sure. If you see a gorgeous, real world attractive.
Yeah, if you see a gorgeous person or a gorgeous thing in a Coen Brothers movie, it is for a purpose, right? Otherwise, everything is very real. Right.
It's like Julianne Moore sticks out so much in The Big Lebowski, as does Tara Reid.
As do the vixens in Oh Brother, or the sirens in Oh Brother.
Brad Pitt in Burn After Reading.
Yes. He is gorgeous. So yeah, where were we? Sorry.
No, we're fine. So essentially, Marty knows that his wife and Ray are sleeping together. Ray is like, well, fuck it, I don't care. I'm owed 2 weeks' pay. I'm going to go get it. So he goes to the bar, and Marty's out back staring at his incinerator. Which funny
plans.
Story. Yeah, hatching plans, totally. A funny thing about the incinerator that I just learned, that they intentionally hired really short people to throw stuff into the incinerator to make it look bigger than it actually was. Which I love. I love shit like that. But he's got a bug zapper right to the right of him too, and it's lighting him in that blue light.
How did those bugs know exactly when to fly into the zapper at certain lines?
They didn't.
But the thing, so it was all happenstance that
all happy accident. Yeah, especially the big zap at the end of the scene. Yeah. They actually wanted to reshoot it, and then they're like, "Nah, that's too good."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that in the background, while they were having people throw stuff into the incinerator, one of the items was a rolled up carpet. And you're like, okay, that's the, signifying getting rid of the body. But the most important part of this scene is when, am I supposed to say Julian or Marty? I'm Julian, right?
You're Julian. Marty.
I'll just call him Dan Hedaya.
Yeah, hairy guy. When he goes into the diatribe about what's funny.
Yeah,
and he talks about all those things that might be funny, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the really, the biting line, I think at the end, he said, what's really going to be funny is when she tells you, I haven't done anything funny.
Yeah, I haven't done anything funny. Yep.
Yeah, so that lays a
funny Ray. Yep.
Yeah, and that's when the bug zaps, I think, and it's all perfection.
And not only that, but he plants it in his head that if it wasn't you, it was someone else, right?
Yeah, he was the one who was there. Yeah, and it paints her in a potential not realist, in a more truthful light than what we've seen her in, which is not this girl who's in need of help, a girl who just is just looking for the next thing. Right. Which could play a little bit to her age, because she is purposely seemingly shown to be younger, whereas Dan Hedaya is a hairy guy who's older.
Hedaya also says she's an expensive lay.
Yep. Meaning that maybe she is just he married her for a trophy wife, she married him for money, and she doesn't have any need for him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some inferences there that I admit I thought about for the rest of the movie. Because it's like, totally. When's the other shoe gonna
so
drop?
Does Ray.
Right.
So does Ray. Yep. So and honestly, it's like immediately in his head, because they have a confrontation like the next scene.
He goes back home where she is staying, and after the night before they were screwing all night long, and this time he's like, "You want the couch or you want the bed?"
Yeah.
He's done with it. Yeah.
She was also on the phone when he came in, and she seemed cagey about it.
Yeah.
Right. Because someone called and didn't say anything and hung up, and she just assumes it's Ray, which it probably was, or not Ray. Dan Hedaya, which it probably was, but they do end up going to sleep.
Although I don't think it was. I think it was actually Lauren Visser.
Oh, it could have been. It could have been Lauren. Yeah, Visser. Although, yeah, I guess it could have been. But what we have next, though, is the scene where Hedaya shows up at the house.
The next morning, he shows up.
The next morning.
And
right.
he nabs her and plans to just, I don't know, leave. This is
yeah, it's like he's going to kidnap her back. He's reclaiming his property, right? He doesn't really know what to do. He's just like acting out. He's like, "You're mine, and I'm taking you back." Is what it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, and and she kicks him in the balls, real good because he pukes.
Yeah, and
there's good ball kicking.
And you got the classic Raimi cam shot of the camera on a board run with two people on either side of it running at Frances McDormand and Dan Hedaya right before she crotches him.
Yeah.
Which they totally admit to stealing from Sam Raimi. They're like, he came up with this really great like fake steady cam. He called it the shaky cam.
That's amazing.
And he so then at that point he just kind of really, it's like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to leave now. And he storms off and he drives off in a heated event, and
he gets his finger broken too by
she bites him,
by Ray. Oh, she bites him. That's what it is.
She bites him.
Yeah.
And then he drives off, and then all of a sudden he slams on the brakes. You see him go the other way, to which Ray says the funniest thing in the movie. He said, I wondered what his face was when he noticed, or when he saw it was a cul-de-sac or it was a dead end.
Yeah.
Which is something else. It's a dead end. All of this is a dead end. Maurice soon discovers that there's a dead end later in the movie too, which is a nice just little callback to that moment. But yeah, it's all setting up that, because what's he do immediately after this? He gets his finger fixed, and he goes to see Emmett Walsh, who's
he's made a decision.
He's hanging out with kids.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, she thought, she saw me rolling a cigarette, thought I had, weed or pot or whatever, grass, probably is what he said. I thought I was a swinger. It's like, that's gross. But also one of the kids that was there asked Marty, it's like, oh, did you break your pussy finger? So he's getting so all of this, it's like he's getting just shit on. Like, he tries to get Abby back. She nuts him and bites his finger. He tries to drive off. He ends up making a fool of himself because it's a dead end. He has to go back the other way. And then this kid is making fun of him wearing a finger splint. And it's all built
he's
up.
The very definition of cuckolded at
pretty
this
much
point.
Yeah.
And he's not taking it well.
No.
No.
So what does he do? He hires Visser to kill them.
Yes.
So Visser kind of, he says, I've something I want you to do. And Visser says, well, if the money's right and it's legal, I'll do just about anything. And this is one of my favorite lines of the movie. And Hedaya says, well, it's not strictly speaking legal. And then Visser retorts with, well, if the pay's right. So it's like, what do you want? You want me to kill him? And he's like, yeah, and he guesses it. He's like, yep, that's what he wants. And he'll do it for $10K.
Have you noticed? I noticed something at this point. Sorry, that Visser is the only character in this movie that always has flies around him.
Oh, that's
Always.
very apparent that he's got the fly that's crawling in his hair in this scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But he
always
has
love
flies
that.
in an earlier scene and a later scene. He's got
He's
flies
always
around him.
sweating too.
Yeah.
He's just very
Texas
much.
is a hot place.
Yeah, well, that's a point I want to make too. Is you feel the heat in this movie, you smell this movie, right? I mean, with the dead fish later, that's rotting on the desk. They keep coming back to that, and it's just like the stench gets worse the longer the movie goes, and as things start to unravel and come together, right? At the same time, it just everything about this movie just feels very of its place,
right?
And yes, very sweaty and fly like attracted, crawling on his face. I love that in movies where it's not intended, right, but they go with it because he felt that fucking fly. He had to have, right? And he's like, oh, I'm going with that. That's going to be good. I love that.
Right. Poor guy has flies around him constantly.
He does.
So was there more to that conversation that you wanted to Shaw?
Well, this is kind of where the first, I think, mention of simple comes into play too. Because,
Money simple.
He says I don't want you to go simple on me and do something stupid, right? After they've agreed to the killing, he's like, I want you to go on a fishing trip. Make yourself seen someplace else while I do this. Don't do anything stupid. And simple, the blood simple is never really explicitly said in the movie, but simple is said a couple times. Yeah, money simple is another time it's said, and it's kind of getting to an idea of that murder or a violent act changes a person, and it kind of sets off a chain reaction of other things in your life that you can't control, or that you wouldn't rationally do in another otherwise situation, right? You're kind of blinded by good sense, I guess, or you're blinded to good sense. It's funny that Sam Raimi in Evil Dead 2 actually uses blood simple in a sentence as kind of a wink to the Coens. It's just a weird little thing, but because they never really explicitly define what they mean by blood simple, but Sam Raimi does it for them in Evil Dead 2.
Is that Sam Raimi's car that Ray drives around?
Okay. I tried to do I had to do a ton of research on this. I did do a ton of research on this, meaning I Googled the internet for hours. And people have said that the classic, the Oldsmobile Delta 88 is in the movie, I'm not certain it is. However, they do make mention in special features on the Criterion disc that they use several different cars for Ray's car. And I do think that potentially in the very first scene where they do an exterior shot of the car after they hit the brakes with Emmett Walsh in the bug behind them, that might be the classic. But every time you see the car headlights or taillights, it's not an Oldsmobile. It's a Buick. So I think that it is used for some pickup shots. And I also think it was used in the audition, not the audition, but the investor trailer that they put together to sell the film. That's the car. The classic is in that.
Gotcha.
So there you go.
Good detective work.
No problem,
Mr. Oliver.
Don't worry about the money. I can get the money. I'll get the money on that. All right. I'm going to go fishing down in Corpus Christi. Okay. So, so really at this point now, Abby has more or less, at least for now several days, however many several will be in this case, has moved in with Ray. while she's waiting to get her her own place, which Ray seems both okay with her getting her own place and is at first was kind of adamant that she doesn't really get in the way or stick around. But she, so they're sleeping and we see Visser has gotten into their place or into Ray's place, has found a gun that is in Abby's purse that was a gift to her from
Julian.
Marty. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And she is, and he takes it. And then he takes a picture, or he brings pictures to.
Important to note here, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Because Brinley noticed this and I did not. So hats off to Brinley, the investigator. He checks the gun for the number of bullets. And there's 3.
Yep.
And when he takes the picture to Julian to show him that they are dead, there are more than 3 bullet holes in the pictures. So
Well, I'll do you one better. That gun is only fired twice in the movie. And the third time it's fired, there's not a bullet in the chamber.
right.
That confused the hell out of me.
Well, I mean, Marty Julian shoots it quite a few times later. But,
He doesn't, though. It never
When he's-
goes off.
oh, you mean the number of times it's fired?
How many times? All right, we're jumping ahead slightly, but how many times does Visser fire it? It's just the once, right? Or does he fire it twice?
Where, in which scene? I'm sorry.
When he kills Marty. When Visser kills Marty.
Once.
Once. All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So anyway, the picture has more bullets and whatever. So while I didn't notice this, you're supposed to pick up on immediately that Visser has doctored the photos. I had no idea. Brinley noticed it. She's like, they're not dead. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, the photos have more bullet holes than he had bullets. So pretty smart kid.
I
there.
will. Yeah, I will. Definitely, I will say that I thought, and yeah, because later it is focused in on the extra bullet hole
On his wrist.
wound on the wrist, right?
Yeah.
So I will say it's like, oh, did we just get psychoed? Did we just lose our main characters at the end of the first act?
This would be another Coen Brothers thing to do because they later do it in a book. It's a book, but No Country for Old Men. When you lose Brolin at like halfway through the movie.
Yep.
But anyway, he covered in flies again. Visser is kind of goading him a little bit. And I think Julian says something like, you can't have it both ways, which Visser kind of like slyly smiles at because he is going to get it both ways. He gets the money and he ends up shooting Julian. With the pearl-handled gun.
The pearl-handled gun that he took from Abby's purse.
Yes. And he kicks it and throws it under a table. Obvious intention at this point is to frame Abby for the murder of Julian and then steal all of the money that Marty has. Or frame Abby and steal all the money that Julian has. Sorry.
Yes.
That's not how I said that.
Well, he's not really going to steal the money. He takes the $10K that he was.
Well, he goes back and hammers on the safe later.
Well, no.
Well, yeah,
there's a reason for that.
But there's a reason for that.
He says that, so Marty, I almost took Jason's thing there. So Marty sees the picture of his wife and Ray dead, and he gets up with the picture, goes.
Oh, he goes back for the picture. Yeah.
He goes into the bathroom and throws up. And Visser at that point says, I'm going to need that picture back because he has to destroy the evidence that he was ever involved. And so when Marty was in the bathroom, he swapped out the picture with the wash your hands sign from the bathroom and put that into a safe. And so Visser knows that he did that because he watched him put something in the safe when he got his or figured he put it in the safe when he got the money out before he was killed. So that's what he wants in the now the money is going to be framed on Ray. Abby is going to be framed for the murder. The loss of the $10,000 was actually Marty's way to try to frame Ray and not him paying off an assassin. So there's all sorts of angles. There's angles within angles here.
Yep.
Yes, because Julian had called Maurice, who's the other bartender, and left a frantic message on his machine that $10,000 was stolen by Ray.
Oh man, the my favorite part of that scene though is the first message on Maurice's machine from whatever woman he's done dirty, who's moving to Paraguay. Paraguay. That's such a fucking Coen thing, man. It's like this non sequitur, just like off the wall thing that makes you wonder.
It breaks up the film just enough where it gives you a little bit of levity before you go back into the noir style of the movie. It's cool Coen Brothers stuff that they often do, these little jokes and shit.
I think the Coen Brothers are really good at that. I think they're good at showing the worst of life side by side with the funny stuff that happens in life, right? Like in this movie, you get that you get that moment of horror that all of a sudden, and you know it's coming because Visser, you hear he cocks the hammer on the gun in his pocket, so you know it's coming. But still, it's you still get the horror of him doing.
But it ratchets up the tension, and that's a good point. Horror is a great word because this is very much a horror film. It's noir and it's horror. Like there are that the suspense, the way it builds to that scene is very horrific.
Yeah, and it's tense, but at the same time, Visser is weird enough to where you are kind of chuckling at him too.
Yeah.
And that is, and so again, and also it's like you have the scene where Marty is trying to kidnap Abby back only for him to get kicked in the balls so hard that he has to puke. And then he drives off angry, humiliated, cucked, as they would say online these days, only for him to run into a dead end and have to face them again going back the other way. So like it's that side by side. And I don't know, because like this was certainly during the time, like the Coens and Raimi and to a certain extent, David Lynch all kind of come from the same place, and they all do it slightly differently, with maybe the Coens maybe being the best at balancing it, or at least not swinging so heavily that you get a little bit of vertigo from it.
I think you're right. I think that they do balance sort of that. They're just very good at shifting tone while maintaining one tone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's very Vonnegut to me. It's the way I see Vonnegut. And I think I mentioned this in Oh Brother. But yeah, they shift the tone. They make you laugh at stuff that normally you wouldn't laugh at, all while maintaining that kind of tense vibe or whatever vibe they're trying.
Like honestly, Fargo is a masterclass in that. It is everything they learned about that type of technique and that type of storytelling is on display in Fargo, 100%.
Well,
and they borrow quite a few things from this in Fargo, which is fun.
and
totally.
a lot of the comedy in Fargo, you get it's the same thing as Raising Arizona, and we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. But the Fargo characters speak so cartoonishly that you're instantly into the comedy vibe.
Yeah.
Raising Arizona, exaggeration is the perfect word for it, because Raising Arizona is such an exaggeration of those types of of the Southern type of character. So you have like the North and South, and they make it cartoonish, and yet they're placed in real world and in real world scenarios or situations. At least in Fargo, far more real world than maybe Raising Arizona, but still, there's still something to be said there.
I got a fun little titty. A little titty.
Would you please?
Can I see it?
No.
I'm gonna pinch this titty.
And you've been listening to Film.
So,
Film.
what does Visser say when he shoots Hedaya? He says, "Who looks stupid now?"
Yeah.
This is a quote from the movie The Lady Killers, a movie that the Coens would eventually remake.
Oh, I watched that movie. I always forget that's theirs. Yeah, I saw
Easiest thing in the world.
Easiest thing in the world.
Easiest thing in
The world. That's a good Coen Brothers movie. Good ones.
That is full on slapstick. It's great.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't even catch that, and I have a feeling I'm going to catch so many of these little things over the next few months as we're watching these, because especially in Raising Arizona, which we'll talk about next week, I saw like 100 other Coen references. There's not as many here, but the next major scene, we have Ray going back to the bar, right? Yeah. He's trying to get his money.
Yep.
He's going back before the bar opens too, assuming that he was going to be alone.
Right.
Quit, but
it's the middle of the night sometime, I think. Yeah.
It's the morning. Maybe it's the afternoon. It's the afternoon because the bar hasn't opened yet.
No, I think he's there after closing because he ends up out in the middle of the night trying to bury the body.
Well, Maurice shows up to open the bar.
Right, but the bar opens in the evening. So it's like the afternoon.
So far he spends a bunch of time cleaning up the mess. Assuming, because I was really confused by that until I ended.
Can I go back just a little bit?
Yeah.
The bar is closed.
Right.
The bar is going to be closed. He tells Maurice not to come in. The bar is closed. I have business to attend to, which was the business of getting the money from Emmett Walsh, and he didn't want Maurice there. When Maurice shows up later, he's with some woman. He's just there to party. He's not opening the bar. Like, you can hear them partying in the background. The bar isn't open. But
I think it's actually another. I think that's and we might have actually mixed up our chronology a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter.
I think we mixed up our chronology.
But the part I'm talking about, if that is Marty goes back, it's Marty, right? Jesus, now I'm so confused. Ray goes back to get his money. He looks in the register. He notices it isn't there. He's like, damn it. So he decides to go into Julian's office, to which he's like, man, he sees Julian dead.
He kicks the gun and it goes off. That's bullet number 2.
Okay, thank you. That scene confused the shit out of me a little bit.
But he kicks the gun and it goes off.
At first, I thought it was just a attention-grabbing sound effect, so that you see that he kicked the gun.
A weird jump cut, Right. But it was he did fire it. You're right, and it goes under a table.
And he finds it, and he's like, "Oh shit, that's
Abby's gun.
That's Abby's gun." He sees the day of dead with the dead fish on the desk. Which, did we mention that it's got Visser's Zippo lighter underneath it? The fish were laid on top of it. They really telegraphed that lighter a few times before that happens. Yeah.
And then he left it. He left it on the table, and when he was leaving after shooting Marty, he forgot his lighter.
Forgot his lighter.
And it got kind of pushed a little bit underneath some of the dead fish.
Right.
Yeah.
So regardless of why Maurice is there, he shows up while Ray is like trying to determine what he's going to do with this body. He's cleaning up,
and he turns on the four tops.
Yeah, he turns on the four tops.
Yep.
What song was it?
Same old song.
Oh, it's same old song. Yeah.
Yeah, same old song.
Which Maurice turned on earlier after the band was finished playing at the bar, and everybody in the bar is like, "Oh God, this song again."
Yeah, it's his song.
And
it's the cool scene when he grabs the quarter, like he steals the quarter from the guy. He's like, "Wait a minute," and he plugs it in.
And when he jumps up on the bar with his Converse,
like
and he does a little squeak. Yeah, a little squeak step. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like Tarantino-ish to me almost.
A bit.
Like Tarantino would kind of like bite that a little bit.
Very much.
Well, it dealt with feet, so of course it would be.
Yeah, I didn't even make that connection necessarily, but it's very the cool fucking bartender
is him is Tarantino.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And the not going through the normal outway of a bar, like with like the swinging door, to go up and over it. All of that is Tarantino quirkiness.
And it's the same way Ray goes into the bar later. He doesn't go through the swinging door either. When he goes to look for money, he jumps over the bar.
Makes
same
you
way
think that the bar's all run down and that doesn't even fucking work.
This ain't no Roadhouse bar. Did I say that already?
Yeah. Now, if depending on the state of the fish and the state of Marty, you might have been sweeping up eyeballs at the end of the night, but
some fish eyeballs, roly-poly fish heads. So Ray ends up cleaning up the joint, right? And he takes whatever bloody, messy clothes or rags he used, he throws them in the incinerator, kind of a callback. It's odd to me at this point that he doesn't throw Ray in there. I was kind of mystified by that, but I guess it's the Coen Brothers just saying, nope. We telegraphed this, but we're not doing it.
Right. It seems exactly like what he would do. I mean, what's his name? Hideo has already told Visser to use the incinerator to get rid of the body. Right.
Right.
And it's like, he's going to throw him in the incinerator, and he doesn't. It's very much like that bait and switch. But I think this is where you see somebody first go blood simple, right? And he didn't even do the killing. But he's completely lost all rational thought at this point.
Yeah, he jumped to an assumption. He
does a really bad job cleaning this place up. Like, he's dripping blood everywhere, trying to clean up the blood. He's dragging the body out. He puts the body in his car, which is bleeding everywhere. He doesn't do the obvious thing and put the body in the incinerator, right? He's just making all the wrong moves.
And then we kind of get to what I consider like the Fargo moment of Blood Simple is when he's driving away with the body. He hears groans, or kind of hears groans, but he decides to stop, I think, to bury the body. And when he does, he realizes that Julian is still alive.
Yeah. Julian like, has gotten out of the car and is crawling on the road.
Yeah, he runs away. He's blood simple at this moment too. But Ray, runs out into the field, like beside himself, really. And when he goes back, he realizes the other door's open and Ray is crawling. You're Julian. I'm gonna get this right one of these times. Holy shit. Sorry, people in Film Seizure land out there. Julian is crawling away at a very slow pace.
So he grabs a shovel. And you think, he's going to hit him over the head with the shovel, but he can't do it.
Right.
He can't do it.
And then he sees headlights coming.
Well, there's a truck coming. Yeah. And so it's like, oh, God, this is all just going terrible. So he ends up having to basically pick him up and move him back into it, which, of course, he's now got blood all over him. Marty coughs up blood, all of that stuff. And so he finds this field next to what appears to be a new house that's like the first house of a new addition or something.
Yeah, it's weird. So it's like down, when they were developing Greenwood, right? And you would have this subdivision next to this plowed cornfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and it would
that
be
shot,
one house that would be a show-off house, as this is what we'll build for you when you pick your lot, basically.
and it's a little later, but when it's morning and you see the car and then all the tire tracks leading in to where he went, I'm like, if you just showed me that still frame, I would tell you this is a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah.
That I'm looking at. It's almost like the Fargo scene with the tire tracks and then the footprints out into the snow.
Totally.
And the money buried and everything. It's like so recognizable then. But Ray is still not dying, or Julian is still not dying while Ray is trying to bury him.
Yeah.
And he has the rose-handled gun.
Mm-hmm.
And to which, Jason, you had pointed out before, it had only been shot twice that we're aware of.
Should have had a bullet in it.
Should have had a bullet in it. And maybe
I can explain.
It does at the end of the movie, I think.
It does. I can explain this. When he checked the revolver part, he may have put it in the middle bullet. So it fired once, fired a second time, and then there's going to be two.
The third one had to go all the way around, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's tense. Every time I see this movie, I
this
think
is
that,
a horror
and
scene.
I think, I think, shit, there's another bullet in that gun.
There's another bullet still in the gun. 1, 2, somebody's being buried alive and screaming in pain at the same time. And Dan Hedaya is not a good guy in this movie, but
he's a good actor. This is a really good scene.
This is a great scene. He is, but there's a visceral element to watching this person getting buried alive.
You know who they're actually burying alive in that scene?
Sam Raimi. Ted Raimi.
Oh, that'd be great.
I don't know.
It's Ethan Coen.
Yeah. Ethan Coen. Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. Did they do that for insurance reasons?
Well, I think what I read was that as first-time filmmakers, there's only so much you can get away with your principal leads.
That's hilarious.
Fair enough. Maybe Dan Hedaya is like, hey, look, I got this thing called Cheers. I got to go show up and do this episode.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But Hedaya grabs the gun and he, like we stated, he fires it. I think shoots it 3 times, and this is a 6-shooter, right?
Yeah.
So the next
one is the bullet.
Yeah.
The next pull would have got him, but Ray grabs the gun from him. And you kind of have that, I don't know what that scene is with Jesus and, or is it Michelangelo? What is it? I'm trying to show you guys on the screen.
It's God and Adam, isn't it? Is it Adam?
Yeah, it's the creation. It's
creation.
The creation of man, right?
Yeah.
They almost have like a creation of man moment when he's grabbing the gun. It almost looks like that, like it was shot purposefully like that.
Right. He's not passing off knowledge. He's passing off Abby.
He's passing. Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. I mean,
you're right. You're not wrong. But eventually, Ray gets the gun from Julian, completes his burying process, and at the end just pounds it a few times. But we're still at a point where Ray is almost like a bystander who felt like he had to get involved. He hadn't done anything overtly violent other than not saving Ray here. And this is his mistake.
Right.
Or is not saving Julian is his mistake. Right.
And I mean, but this kind of comes back around to that bill is coming due for how expensive Abby is.
Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
And he thinks that Abby was the one who shot him to get rid of her problem, and yet she didn't finish the job. So he feels like, well, this is going to be instantly brought back in, between ballistics or fingerprints or whatever, anything could lead anything back to her or him.
I was slightly interested in what kind of, because they don't really state what year this is. I don't know if it says Texas 84 or 81 or 79. I don't think it does. Like how much trace there really would be for the act here. It's certainly not what it would be in the 2000s or, them being able to track it down really easily.
There's a lot of blood he was not able to clean up in that process.
And also in Texas. Though,
but you can't confirm who killed him from what was left behind, is what I'm saying.
That's very possible.
You could find out that there was a murder there,
right?
certainly.
And it's very possible that even though, like I said, he's the owner of the bar that everybody goes to every night, that it's open, at least it doesn't seem like it's consistently open. He's the guy that he's got that status, but the cops may have come and it's like, oh yeah, Marty was a dick. He probably made an enemy, and that's it. You know, I mean, and it would have just dropped at that. And if the cop or if the sheriff of this county or this tiny town happened to like Ray, he'd probably be like, yeah, well, yeah, they had beef, but probably nothing led to murder. You know, I mean, it's that sort of thing. You think that it may have never gotten someplace further than, yeah, Marty made an enemy one night.
Yep.
This is where things I think really get fun in this movie, because now you've got a situation where Ray thinks that Abby killed Hidea, and they have a conversation at her apartment about it, and she's like so fucking confused because Ray's saying stuff like, I took care of it.
Well, he called her at 5 a.m. at sunup to say I love you.
Yeah.
And he's like, and she's like, what time is it? I don't know. So he, like, everything he says to her for the next two scenes is extremely confusing.
He tells her, I was surprised you could sleep. I took care of everything. You know, and it's like he's accusing her, and he is. And she's totally confused. And that's when she says, I haven't done anything funny.
And then he kind of like all the blood leaves his face.
Yep.
And he's like, I'll see you later.
That's my favorite moment.
He says, what was that? Yeah.
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 I love the way that is delivered. And if you remember, which hopefully most people who are watching a Coen Brothers film will pick up on the weight of that statement that she makes there, because it's every doubt that Ray was given by Julian that is just confirmed, right? It's confirmed, whether it's true or not. He now 100% believes that in some respect, she is the person that Julian warned him about.
And then, yeah, totally. Absolutely. And then, but then it's what's so fun is that later she goes back to his house and he's packing up to leave, right?
Oh, he has found also 3 spots of blood that has soaked into the back seat of his car, to the point that if he presses down on it, it just oozes blood as if Dan Hidea's body has made up the back seat of that car.
Can I just say that cut from Julian listening, or Maurice listening to the voice recordings and then going to press the stop button, to them transitioning to Ray pressing on the blood, is just super cool. There's some really cool, I didn't write them all down, but some really awesome like film transitions. I love like one with the fan spinning that goes from one room to another while the fan is spinning is really cool.
What I love about the fans is that it's those fans aren't doing shit, right?
No, they're not.
The fans aren't circulating the air. I mean, it's just every time they show those fans and the transition of the fans, the whole movie feels stuffier. It feels like the walls are closing in.
Well, the sound of
it's oppressive.
Yeah. The sound of the windshield wipers returns later too, in a moment that's particularly tense. I don't remember when, but at some point you hear the windshield wipers again. Almost as if saying this was the moment he should have stopped. You know, he didn't have to go any farther with her.
Right after Ray is trying to clean up his back seat, he gets I believe it's when Maurice confronts him, because Maurice has listened to the message, and he goes to confront Ray about stealing the money. And Ray's just like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? And he's also like, yeah, I killed the guy. You know, he doesn't tell him that, but he's like, this is getting weird. Like, why did he leave them? You know, so it's another like layer of confusion. Then Abby shows up, and he flat out tells her, you know, he was alive when I buried him, to which he at that point has confessed to the murder that she had nothing to do with. Abby had nothing to do with. And there's that great moment where the newspaper is being delivered and it hits the window. Like right after
I love it.
that. It's like this great like punctuation, exclamation point on
That
scene.
might have been when the windshield wiper sound came in
I
again.
think you're right.
And then it was broken by because there was a swift break to the end of that sound. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because she had nothing to do with it. And he has now outrightly told her that he thought she did it. She is now doubting him.
Right.
And
Totally.
then Maurice warns her too. Like, you might want to stay away from him. He's got a little fucky in the head or whatever he says.
Absolutely.
But this is when Abby goes to visit the bar. Is after this scene, right?
Right. And Emmett Walsh is in the office, and he hears somebody coming, and he hides.
Because at this point, Emmett Walsh has realized two things. He's left his lighter there, and he doesn't have the photograph. So he's got to go back, and he is not happy about going back. Yeah.
Yeah, there's maybe a continuity issue in this movie. I'm not sure. One of my kids pointed this out too. But when Emmett Walsh is destroying the photos, he has a fire to burn them. But when he goes to light a cigarette is when he realizes his lighter is missing.
Yeah.
He's like, well, how did he light that fire? I'm like, don't worry about it.
But
that's what matches are for, kid.
Yeah.
This is when Visser has his moment of confusion because the body is gone. What the fuck, right? So everybody is intricately involved in this mystery, but nobody has all the information. And that is fascinating. That makes a really good thriller.
I agree.
So yeah, 100%. Sorry, I muted myself there, but I 100% agree.
So so does he find the lighter? Does he find a lighter? I can't remember.
No, because he tells Ray later that he has something of his.
Yeah.
When he's searching his body, but we haven't quite got there yet.
And he does try and get in the safe, and he can't get into the safe, right?
Right. He's beating the shit out of the safe. So Abby, I think, sees this. Mm-hmm. Later, Ray goes back to the bar, and Visser watches him, too. So Visser has watched both Abby and Ray go into the bar. And Ray, when he's leaving, notices that he's being followed.
Yeah.
And he thinks, well, Abby might be in trouble because he still thinks Abby killed him, right? He's unsure. So he goes to her apartment. She shows up at her apartment.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't skipped anything major to this point, right?
No, you're
and
good.
Ray is just sitting at the window with his hand on the window, the lights out, just watching. Right? And Abby comes in. Go ahead.
This, I just want to point out, this scene is pure Hitchcock. Like, holy shit.
Like Rear Window?
Yeah, very much Rear Window. It's, God, I agree with you, Jeff. You said it almost from the top that this scene in the movie is just phenomenal, and it really, really is. So much tension, so much suspense, so much confusion. Nobody knows really what they're dealing with, right? So yeah, you're right. Yeah, Abby shows up. Ray's there. Ray's looking out the window in the dark. Abby turns the light on, and Ray says, "Turn the light off. There's somebody out there watching us." And she's like, "Well, I don't fucking trust this Ray guy." She thinks that Ray killed. Well, he did. He did kill Hedaya, but she doesn't know all the information, right? Because Ray still thinks that Abby did it, but now he's starting to have his doubts about that. And there's this mystery third person involved that he doesn't know about. Abby is completely clueless, right? The information she has is really bad, and she's mistrusting the wrong person.
She still thinks that Julian's alive,
right? Which is wonderful.
Yeah.
There's a nightmare scene that's kind of scary too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. She's having nightmares of him coming to get her, essentially. Yeah. So,
well, he delivers the message that he will kill you too. We think that, it's like, oh yeah, of course, Visser is going to kill her, but it's her own head
thinking
telling
Ray
her that Ray is going to kill her too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can see Visser on the rooftop on the building across the way through his scope, seeing into the apartment. And there's a lot of suspense and tension building there with the light coming on and off and what he can see and what he can't and how he's tracking Ray. But eventually, Abby turns the light back on, and then it cuts back into the apartment, camera facing Ray, and then the shot comes and it just blows his whole chest forward. Like he's been shot and killed by Visser, and Abby's just obviously like shocked. And then it's cat and mouse, and Chuck, you're on mute.
Oh yeah, Abby thinks Julian killed Ray.
Yeah.
She has no understanding of the existence of Visser.
Right.
Like she doesn't even know he's anywhere in the picture. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But yeah, she runs to Ray, and then I think she realizes, oh shit, Ray. I got it right that time.
She also takes cover, and she throws her shoe at the light to break the light bulb. Yep. So that the room goes dark again, and that's when Visser has to move in for the kill.
Right, and for some reason, he has his own gun, but he also still has the ruby handle gun, or did Ray have it and put it down when he came in?
Ray has it.
I think Ray gave it back to her.
Ray gave it back to her and said,
"Here's your gun back."
Yeah, you left this behind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
you left this
one bullet gun. Here it is.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting by the door.
Although she definitely, I think, she may have reloaded it at this point.
No, she.
I don't know.
I think
she wouldn't have had the bullets. Because her purse is at Frank's still. Because she's in her own apartment now. But all her stuff is still at Ray's. I called him Frank. I don't know where the fuck I'm talking about. So Skip and Larry.
You don't know where the fuck you're talking about?
Yeah, Skip and Larry, if you guys can fix me here. For the record, I had...
Skip, by the way. I'm taking that name.
Yeah. I'm growing my vestigial tail and losing my memory because I had the first... vaccine shot. So people out there, make sure you don't take no vaccines from. I'm just joking. If anyone doesn't know that, I'm just joking.
Well, hopefully
man,
by the
I've had
time
trouble
they
with
hear this, most people have.
Well, isn't it wild? There's only 5 freaking characters in this movie, and I can't get their goddamn names straight. I don't know what's wrong with me. So, anyways, Harold comes across the street. No, okay. Visser comes to clean up Abby because he did not hit her the one shot he took before she was able to shoot out the light with the shoe. And she goes and hides initially in the bathroom. Visser comes in, he goes up to Ray's body, and he's like, "You have something of mine." And presumably he's looking for the lighter. They don't really say, but he wants his lighter back.
He also says something along the lines of, "I don't know what you two think you're up to," because he hasn't really figured out what their plan is. Because they don't fucking have one.
He may just be talking to the voices in his head. The dude's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
But he clearly thinks that they're onto him in some way, and he's paranoid. He's gone blood simple. Right. In his own way. In fact, maybe of all of them, he's the one who's gone simple the most.
He could have left and been done with this whole situation and never had any issue.
Right.
Well, whatsoever, because what Ray did
is, considering he was a giggling like maniac at the beginning of the movie, he probably started a little simple.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's more of a cue to what kind of person he is than what his intelligence is.
I think he's intelligent. He's very intelligent, but he has gotten less so as the movie has progressed.
Right, because there is a third component that he did not count on.
Yeah.
I don't know why. The story wouldn't work. It's one of those movie things, like, you have to leave it this way, otherwise the story would have ended 6 hours ago, or whatever. Like, what happened couldn't have happened. But so now he needs to kill Abby. He needs to finish her off. He goes into the bathroom. of course, they're focusing on the shower curtain. Maybe some more Alfred Hitchcock for you there, Jason. Who knows? And he opens the shower curtain, and Abby is gone. She's escaped out the window, right?
She's gone out the window to the empty into the empty apartment next door, that was exactly when I was like, hey, like Bound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the scene that always sticks for me in this movie. I think most people this is the scene that sticks with them. But Visser reaches his hand out of the window to open the next adjacent apartment window. And Abby does something really smart. She grabs his hand, pulls it in, and then stabs it with the knife that I guess she took from him, I think, right? I forget where she got the knife, but
was the knife on Ray?
I think it might have been on Ray.
Might have been on Ray, yeah.
But it's one of those big fuck off Texan hunting knives.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah, everything in this movie is a big fuck off Texan something.
She does not hesitate, and she does not go like half strength. Like she does what she sets out to do. It's awesome. And she pins him. And he's kind of like fucked. He can't move, right? Without like really fucking up his hand. So what does he do? He
punches through the wall.
Well, he shoots
through the wall.
Holes in the wall first. Yeah, which is what they use. They used that the light coming through the bullet holes in the investor trailer.
Yeah. It's so awesome.
It's
super awesome.
And it looks just it's definitely like one of the hallmark shots of the movie. And then he starts pounding on the drywall to bust through it. Yeah, and he does. So with his left hand, he busts through the wall, and he pulls the knife out of his right hand. That's fucking awesome. That's just awesome.
Yeah, and
while he's doing the
that's just menacing as fuck.
I think on both HBO Max and Criterion Channel, they use a shot of Frances McDormand when she's kind of pinned against the wall with the light kind of coming through. So it's all from this final scene.
Yep.
Yeah. So
if it isn't Dan Hedaya crawling away from a shovel, it's Frances McDormand in shadow, I think.
Yeah.
While she's going over there, I can't remember her exact words, but she says something to the effect of, "You're not going to get me, Ray," or something like that. This is when she indicates
Marty. I'm not scared of you,
Julian.
Marty.
Yeah,
I'm not scared.
I got the name wrong. So thanks, Skip. Thanks, Larry.
to which she says, it's just like I'm not afraid of you, Marty, or something like that. And Visser just starts to laugh.
Yeah,
right?
and he says, "Well, I'll tell you when I see him in hell."
Yeah, I'll tell him if I see him.
I'll tell him when I see him. Yep.
That's it. Yeah.
So
and it's great because it's intended to elicit like they're going to meet in hell kind of thing, but they don't outright say it. That's some of the stuff I like about Coen Brothers is they lead you to water.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. And it's written and directed by Coen Brothers. Four Tops.
She shoots him first. She takes the last shot, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, she had already shot him, I thought.
Well, she shoots him. She shoots him through the door as she's kind of waiting for him to come through. She takes the shot first. He drops. She says, "I'm not going to let you scare me, Marty." And that's when he laughs. It's like, "Well, I'll tell him if I see him."
We didn't mention the shot first.
And then he dies staring at pipes.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find some meaning there, but I was like, oh, whatever. Pipes.
I'm pretty sure there is meaning there. So
a ceiling fan would have been appropriate.
Well, no, I mean it's all that entropy coming together, right? Because it's a drip of water that falls on him at the end. At least the way that I read it is all these strands had come to a head, and the pressure, is what caused everything to drop.
I'll buy it. If you're selling that, I'm buying it. So
I mean, there has to be a reason they showed it, and that's the only one I could come up with.
Well, it is a rather complex system of pipes for a relatively simple bathroom. Gigantic bathroom, but relatively simple bathroom.
It's called a bathroom simple, Jeff.
It's where you go blood simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So for a first directorial in writing effort, as you know, you'll find out through all the rest of the Coen Brothers films, they tend to write and direct them
and they switch
together.
off sometimes too, don't they? Like
Sometimes it's usually, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's usually directed by Ethan and written by Joel, but I might be wrong there. I should know this for a fan of the Coen Brothers as big as I am.
Yeah, and directed by Joel, written well,
It says both all the time, but I
Right.
think Joel is the primary director.
They
I think.
usually both write.
Yes,
I
and
think
Joel
Joel
is usually-
directs, produced by Ethan, but I know that they've had movies where they've swapped that.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
But anyway, as a first movie, even with I don't know, there are minimal flaws in this to me. I just think it's a great film.
I like this movie quite a bit. This has a lot of sensibilities to movies I liked watching in my early 20s. Something like this would have made me think a lot of like Chinatown, even some of the more classic noir movies. This is right up my kind of alley. It's got to me, I don't think there's any fat in this movie at all. There's no room, there can't be. There's only 5 characters in this, so there's not really anything that you can really kind of add to this to make it to do things that would, that you could say, well, if they cut this out or it overcomplicates this. It's a complicated story being told relatively simply. We didn't talk too much about the happenings of this movie. We talked mostly about the peripheral stuff. So no, I dig it. I dig it a lot.
I'm glad you like it. I think if you like this movie, you are going to have similar probably reactions to Miller's Crossing. Maybe Barton Fink. Barton Fink is kind of an outlier, Coen-wise, for me. I still love it, but it's different, I think. Maybe Jason has a different thought on that. But
I think that Jeff will like Barton Fink because it's a Hollywood story told in old Hollywood.
Yeah.
And with a lot of shining undertones.
I like that.
But it is definitely the movie of theirs that took me the longest to warm up to, because I saw it the first time in my 20s, didn't quite get it, revisited it, didn't quite get it, but over the years it's become one of my favorites.
Yeah, and it's got wonderful performance. Much like this movie, I really liked all the performances in this. Frances McDormand was great. Ray, what was his name? Getz.
John Getz.
John Getz is a little understated, which I appreciate about him. He doesn't overact his part, which is great. We're going to see a little overacting next week with Raising Arizona. but rightly so.
But I think it's all perfect. It's perfect.
It's rightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely deserved. Those roles deserve that kind of acting, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to mention outside of this is my Blu-ray copy of this had Mortimer Young from Forever Young Pictures introducing the film. I did some research because it's kind of a weird. So Jeff, when this was released on Blu-ray, they had him just say, "Hey, I'm from Forever Young Pictures. This is the re-release of this beautiful film," and blah 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 blah. It's actually done and written by the Coen Brothers. I don't know if they filmed it, but they wrote it, and it happens again on the DVD release of Big Lebowski.
Yeah, I thought it was another one. Yeah,
I know you and I were talking about it, so I'm going to try to figure out where that's from.
Okay. I did really, really enjoy this. Like I said, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me in a very understated way was that I really did pick up on a lot of a kind of sexy attitude to this movie. You know, we've talked about the erotic thrillers in the past, you know, and I think this one is probably sexier than all of them, and it's far more understated. But it's because there is it's a little bit more animalistic in a realistic way, as opposed to the, you know, Sharon Stone shows her muff, so Michael Douglas loses his fucking brains, you know, or whatever, right? It's like that stuff is written in a completely different way that is almost like porn, right? Like
Right.
It's set up to be sexy. This is sexy by the way it plays out and by the way you do really like Abby, but you do also get some of why Ray is nervous about her.
Yeah, I think even though Bound is way more overtly sexy, I think you could kind of put these films in a similar category of just sexiness in general.
Yeah.
Like the way they were shot, the way that they're done.
Well, it's
Obviously,
the attitude. It's
yeah.
So yeah, it's and like I said, you know, these are all characters who look like real people. Again, not like your Kathleen Turner from Crimes of Passion or Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct. These are realistic people that you could see other realistic people getting into this exact situation.
I realistically agree with you.
Chuck, real quick. So the joke from Forever Young Films goes further on that disc.
Oh, okay.
The commentary on that disc is by someone called Ken Loring of Forever Young Films. Ken Loring is not a real person. Forever Young Films is not a real restoration.
Right.
It is a completely fake audio commentary by a film historian who is essentially just like being a total like snobby film guy, but is actually like totally stupid. Like he can't articulate anything about film.
Holy shit.
Yeah, the whole commentary on that disc is a parody.
So this is kind of funny. I'm
yeah,
letting the cat out of the bag a little bit, but Jeff and I talked about me doing a character exactly like that.
Exactly like that.
And I was just
about to say is that this would be something that if the three of us ever made a movie, I would be the guy most interested in saying, hey, let's do this thing as a fucking joke where we just have like this snooty film, you know, guy who is talking about these things in just complete and total non sequiturs, complete and total, you know, like reaching for things. To be honest
exactly
with you,
what it is.
I started getting a real appetite for that when I wrote my my B Movie Enema article on Sex Squatch, because that was exactly how I wrote that article, as trying to pretend it had like some sort of cultural significance that it does not have.
Yep.
So here are some excerpts from the commentary. This fellow in the interesting wardrobe is on his way, leading us with the sad man, leaving him to his thoughts, more chortling as he goes from the first fellow. Rather a lot of chairs piled up there. And this is the musical moment in the film, un moment musical, and several shots had to be made so the screen wouldn't go blank while the music played. And these are the shots, so let's admire them.
I love it. That is very similar to the character I have concocted. I like it.
There's that dog again. Wonderful natural motion. You really would never know, would you? Remarkable.
Pretending the dog is fake?
Yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yep.
Yeah, so any other thoughts on the film itself from anyone?
I don't. It's a good movie. It cooks at it's like 95 minutes long. So it doesn't stop. You know,
and
so
it sweats while it cooks.
Oh, it sweats for sure. It was giving me the beef sweats.
Yeah.
I dig it. I said that I feel like this is Texas the movie, not because I think it's the quintessential Texas movie. It's just this is what I think happens in small Texas towns.
Yeah.
Cheating,
that's funny.
wives, and murder.
I have a similar, and we'll talk about it on Miller's Crossing. I think that's like Gangster, the movie. It's like a perfect gangster film.
But it's
in my
using,
opinion.
and it's, and some of that may just be properly using tropes and other other stereotypical, well, we're making a crime noir film, it's got to have these things, it's got to have shadows.
They nod instead of leaning too heavily into it.
Exactly. I mean, it's just using it all right.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Next week we get a complete tonal shift. Couldn't be a more different movie, but in some ways the same. Next week with Raising Arizona.
Yep.
Can't wait for that one. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a good comedy. It's a real good comedy.
It sure is. I shit myself laughing every time I see it.
Oh, yep. God. So you had to do some laundry then the other night.
I did.
My God.
No, he just throws his clothes in the incinerator with the bodies.
And whatever chair he was sitting on. It's like, yeah, that's too. So that's going to be on Wednesday. Every Wednesday, new episodes of Film Seizure. Next Monday is Monster Mondays, and that I'm talking about the Mysterians. I'm still in that weird May covering Japanese monster movies and King Kong movies because of the original schedule for Godzilla vs. Kong. It's coming. My review of that is coming. It's just not happening until later in May. But Mysterians, it's a weirdo movie. Not particularly great, but I still find things I like about it. So that's Mondays. Both of those things on filmseizure.com. You can find Film Seizure at places like SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Let's see here. Where else? Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, and Audible. We also upload the audio files to YouTube. Static image, but a lot of people just like having YouTube playing. I do. I like having YouTube on while I'm working and stuff. So if that is your preferred way to receive things in your ear receptacles, we're there someplace. This Friday, I have a new B-Movie Enema article. It was a rough one. It's Resident Evil. So Resident Evil is not a good movie at all. I
remember your texts while you were watching that one.
And I spell it out for you.
And I think they just get worse from there, too, if you can believe it.
Yeah, I'm really thinking if that's really what I want to subject myself to in October. But we'll see. So that's bmovieenema.com. You can also follow both Film Seizure and B-Movie Enema at Facebook and Twitter. Just search for those things. We will come up. Follow us. And you can also subscribe to the B-Movie Enema YouTube channel as clips from the various movies that I can clip are there that I use in articles, but also my B-Movie Enema, the series, which season 1 is complete. Season 2 coming September what? What date? What day is it?
11th. I must never forget.
That's exactly right. Eagles Will Cry on September 11th, 2021 as B-Movie Enema kicks off season number 2.
There's a Prince song about that, right?
Yes.
When Eagles Crying.
Well, I think actually that's a cover of When Doves Cry, but done by like Pickup Jones or some country music.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pickup Jones. Jesus Christ.
Pickup Jones.
I may have to use that as a character on B-Movie Enema.
Oh my.
Anyway, so until next week when we raise a little Arizona, that works. We'll do it that way. My name is Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Julian, Ray, Marty, Frank.
Sure. Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah. And I'm Jason Oliver, and you have been listening to Film Seizure. I think we all went a little blood simple there.
We're definitely simple somehow.
Who's stupid now?